Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be covering a topic that I talk about almost every single day at work, and one that I really enjoy speaking about when it comes to dealing with our customers. And the topic is embodying enterprise scale when we're talking about automation adoption. And the difference here versus a lot of previous conversations that we may have had of talking about adopting automation is we're not just talking about adopting automation because we feel that most organizations have matured past that phase. And we've definitely learned through previous other conversations, such as customers presenting at Ansible Fest and even at Red Hat Summit, that spoke about the fact that they have realized that automation adoption is a long-term journey. It requires a strategy. And so they've kind of embarked on that. But what we want to talk a little bit more about is that how Red Hat has figured out the prescribed way of how you can take that and be able to scale that adoption within your enterprise. And so that's the kind of the area that we're going to cover today. And so I think we're at the point where we're ready to jump right in. I wanted to introduce myself in case you've never never had a chance to personally meet. My name is Walter Bentley. I am currently the senior manager that is in charge of what we call the automation practice here at Red Hat Consulting. And I cover all of North America, some of Canada, and we're working on LATAM as well. And what my team specializes in doing is that I consider us the Navy SEALs of Ansible, for a better way of describing us. Whereas we focus on not just helping our other delivery experts, the delivery experts that are consultants that are delivering for our customers in their day-to-day activities. We also help with the enablement that they will take part in. We also do a lot of thought leadership. We're in charge of creating the solutions and journeys that are delivered in reference to automation here at Red Hat Consulting. And of course, last but not least, we also help and take part in that delivery as well. And so I'm very pleased to be here with Red Hat. I've had a chance to work for many different verticals and many different types of organizations. And because of that knowledge I bring to the table, I'm hopefully able to help other customers as well to seek out their ultimate automation needs and desires that they may have. So now that you know me, we can jump right into the topics at hand. And so when we're talking about evolving or being able to automate things, a lot of times the scenario that automatically pops up and what we used to use is we would talk about how cars used to be made and how the assembly lines were all required manual intervention, and it would take almost weeks, if not months sometimes, to build a vehicle, and how now all those things have been automated. But I figured that we're at a point now where we need to evolve this conversation as to how we look at manual practices. So I went to the example of what we have here, which is the picture on the left is a very frustrated person who's driving their vehicle, probably to work, probably from work, sitting in traffic, something that is considered to be a manual practice nowadays, right? Driving your own vehicle versus the self-driving option, which is the picture on the right. And how can we, and how we're evolving to being able to have cars self-drive themselves, and how that's becoming much more and more of a common option that you can now have in certain vehicles. And so when I'm thinking of being able to evolve and scale, this is kind of the landscape that I would like to set. Instead of starting in the old archaic approaches, right, we're doing something as simple as driving a car, something as simple as deploying an application, or doing something from an operational standpoint. How can we take those activities and those behaviors and evolve them to the point now where they can be done on their own in an automated fashion, as well as something that can sustain and be able to encounter load, be able to scale up or scale down based on the demand? And so that's kind of where we're heading towards now. And that's where I want to center ourselves around. How do we embody being able to do that inside of our organizations and enterprises? So we want to move from being that frustrated driver on the left to being that driver on the right who is reading their own publication, reading the magazine, relaxing, maybe FaceTiming with friends and family. We know in these times that we're living in, that's become a very popular thing. And so we want to, how do we want to figure out how do we go from that driver on the left to the driver on the right? So that's what we're going to be covering today. One thing that we've all have to learn and appreciate is that adoption is a journey and not just a destination. And what do we mean by that? What we've come to realize is that many organizations are at a different place as far as their maturity when it comes to automation. Some are just starting out. Some have been doing it for a while, but haven't exactly got many folks on board as far as being able to move it forward. And then there's some who are running full speed ahead and are looking now for means to know how they can optimize all the things that they've put in place around automation. So knowing where you stand in your maturity ribbon is really important, and that's the first thing that you have to evaluate. And that's not based on the number of scripts you have written or the number of processes that you have automated, but that's really rated more around how have you taken your end-to-end workflow and how have you been able to break that apart into components that can be reusable as well as provide that full ribbon of automation or that full user experience. The second thing you have to also evaluate is how have the things I have automated worked towards my main core business objectives? We can get very tied up into dealing with the day-to-day tactical things and not look at the bigger picture and say, well, from a grander scale, what I automated, how does that affect me driving my business forward? How does that affect me being competitive against my competitors? And then, of course, how does that affect my customer and has it improved my customer experience? Keeping in mind those aspects of it is really going to help you determine, first off, your current maturity level around automation, and then, of course, be able to start to lay some foundation as to what is going to be your strategy moving forward to gain that enterprise scale, the enterprise-wide adoption of automation. So there are some key characteristics that as Red Hat we have identified that really help you to not only drive and feed transformation, but also make a strategy that is sustainable, one that continues to keep working even after you've maybe lost focus on it and moved on to something different. Those strategies and approaches can keep working for themselves. And these keys to transformation we have identified here fall into 5 different areas. And these areas are not rocket science, right? These are things that you do day to day inside of your, from an IT perspective. But what it is that now putting them out in the front allows you to be able to create a strategy that encompasses all these things, thus really driving true transformation. Transformation is so multifaceted in the sense that we're not just talking about swapping out one piece of technology and replacing it with another. We're talking about being able to actually change the behaviors that are occurring inside of your organization from an IT perspective and be able to focus those behaviors on being automation first. Automation being the first thought when you're dealing with your processes. And the other piece of the puzzle is that there's a huge cultural component that is part of this transformation. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit later about as to how do we drive that transformation also from a cultural perspective. So these areas here are very straightforward. You want to keep things simplified. You want to have a well-defined targets, well-defined use cases, actually writing those use cases down, being able to take those user stories and associating that with a business objective is going to be very important. Of course, keeping everyone accountable, always embedding governance, embedding change processes, embedding standards in everything you do is a key area. We have to think about security, right? We have to think about compliance. We have to think about being able to audit what we're doing from the very beginning. And that's where that responsible part comes in. No longer the days of old where we go off and build something and then we think of the security component last, right? We have moved far away from that place, whereas security needs to be at the very beginning of that strategy. We have to be autonomous, right? We want to be able to take out all the human intervention or as much of the human intervention as possible and be able to put in predictable automation that you can rely on, automation that will work time and time again, as well as, again, moving into the last area, automation that can scale based against the demand that you may put against it. And that's a very important piece of the puzzle. We think that just because we've automated something that it will be able to scale to any demand. And the reality is that that's not the case. You have to think about it ahead of time in order to be able to incorporate that ability to scale in your automation. And again, that is just some of the components that we found that really drive in a sustainable strategy around being able to do transformation. So now that we've kind of laid the foundation around what are the keys and characteristics you need to have in your plan, we can now go into some more details around how Red Hat uses that open source culture to be able to drive that innovation, and what we will call powers open innovation. And these characteristics that are shown here, or these behaviors that are shown here, help not just you deliver automation, but help you accelerate and adopt mastery of almost any technology. So you can use these principles here in many different circumstances and be able to come out with the outcome of being able to drive and accelerate the mastery of that technology. In this occasion, we're talking about adopting automation, and so we're going to use the examples here and apply it in that way. So these patterns are patterns that you will find that Red Hat uses when creating their own software internally, as well as when we're producing software for our customers. And these behaviors are things that you'll see that we do, and what we're able to do is now formulate journeys and formulate offerings where we can now come in and show our customers how they can do that for their own businesses. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail, but there's a few that I always jump at that I really enjoy and love to share with our customers when talking with them. The first one is breaking things into smaller chunks. And I know that seems very trivial. You would say, well, that's self-explanatory. I have a big project, I want to break it into chunks. But what we find is that as technologists, we want to go at a problem and try to solve for the whole problem holistically in one fell swoop. And the reality is that's very hard to do. You have a lot of technical debt. You have years of processes that are in place that you've been doing for a long time that you now have to take apart. And it's best to take the time to take them apart, break them up into smaller chunks, and then try to tackle each of those chunks independently to be able to eventually get to an end-to-end work stream. So that's the first advice that I would give, is that definitely look at those use cases that you want to apply as you've associated with your business objectives, and then take small components of those use cases and go about and trying to automate those things first. And as you begin to be able to couple them together, you'll at the end hopefully have a full workflow. The other one that I wanted to draw out is collaborate. And again, this again is something that I've personally experienced. I've worked for, as I said before, many different types of verticals, and I have sat in the team meetings, whereas there are hard lines between maybe operations and networking, or the development team and operations, or the DBA and operations team, right? There are hard lines where folks are not willing to cross those lines and help each other out. A lot of finger pointing, and so when an issue pops up, you don't feel like you're working together as one team. You feel like it's us versus them. And so that idea of collaboration, of those teams being able to work together and be transparent into what they're doing, as well as be able to collaborate on being able to solve for and also implement things in your system. That piece of collaboration is very important, and we'll touch more on that in a little bit. And then the last one, which is foster learning. You need to create an environment or a culture of wanting to be able to learn new things. And again, I always tell my leadership when we're talking about learning is that not everybody learns in the same way, and it is not all times do we give our associates the ability to be able to learn. Right? Do we create an environment where they can learn new things and feel challenged and want to be able to move forward and share with others what they have learned? And so that's another area that you have to pay keen attention to, is fostering learning, creating an environment where people can learn, and noting that not everybody learns in the same model. So now that we've kind of evaluated some of these open source cultures that we use internally, Red Hat, and that we impart onto our customers, we can now kind of move into the next area, which is talking about the automation adoption journey map. And the reason why I'm presenting this here is that this is a perfect example of what we have done by taking those open source principles of being able to drive innovation and taking those characteristics around being able to do transformation, and we button them up together into what we call the Ansible automation adoption journey. And what we're leveraging there is being able to take the Ansible automation platform, which is now a fully developed platform that has many different components on top of Ansible Tower and Ansible Engine, but it also offers additional things to be able to really add that value and really help drive that enterprise scale adoption of automation in your organization. The reason why this journey map is important to me is that this is what my team and myself have put together to be able to help customers be able to transition from just a theory of being able to do automation into actually being able to take it into practice and plan and develop automation at scale. And it walks you through multiple increments here of how we're going to be able to do that, and the things that we put in place to be able to help you to be able to optimize in how you're adopting automation in your organization. And so I just wanted to introduce that to you. If you've never seen this before, this is a perfect example of how you can take your organization on this journey to be able to really embody enterprise-wide automation, as well as be able to create automation that can absolutely scale. But we'll talk more about this in a few minutes. What I now wanted to do is really more speak to the approaches as to how Red Hat services can help to drive adoption of automation. And this is, and consider this to be a model, an iterative model of sorts, right? Whereas if you take all of these components, you'll be able to harness the value of scale. And the idea around it being iterative is that once you get to the end, it's not to say, "Whew, I'm done. I don't have to worry about that anymore." You know, automation has to be treated as you would an application. Whereas you're going to revision it, you're going to make adjustments to it, you're going to continuously improve on it as time goes forward, right? That's how you would handle any application. We have apps on our phones. We're constantly getting updates because the folks who are creating those apps are behind the scenes adding things, adding function feature sets, maybe fixing issues that they found. And so that's why those releases are constantly coming. We have to treat our automation in the same way. Automation is something that is meant to be continuously worked on and improved, as well as repairs may be needed as well, right? We may have to fix some issues in our automation and how things are being handled. So I want you to look at this model, and I'm going to just cover a few key areas in this model that really excite me and have helped me to really see how this thing really does drive automation. We've practiced it with many of our customers, and we've seen such great success with it, and I just wanted to share that with everyone here today. The thing that always jumps at me is the fact that we take advantage of the fact that we think that we've defined a strategy, right? When we start off to be able to solve for something or to handle some sort of transformation, you know, we have to ask ourselves, well, did we actually write down what we wanted to do? Do we exactly know what is going to be the business drivers behind it? Do we possibly maybe roundtable what are the possible challenges we run into? You know, what are the dependencies? Have we really created a plan? So one of the first things we do and sit down with our customers is we define a strategy. We create a plan as to how you want to achieve that adoption. We create a plan as to how you want to go about applying automation inside of your organization. And again, while that may seem trivial and may seem very self-explanatory, you, as a technologist, I'm pretty sure you could agree that that's not something that you really take time to do in most cases. And so taking the time out to do that, document it in a way that can be referenced, as well as being able to look at those use cases later and say, as far as business value, where do they sit in this scale? What's going to give me the most business value and what's going to give me the least business value? And being able to do that analysis allows you to be able to choose what things you should try to tackle first, and not just for the sake of just tackling them, but the sake of being able to help out and drive your business forward, as well as to be able to show your leadership the value in doing automation. And so those components are really key and important components there. The other area that I always really enjoy talking about is establishing those capabilities. And what we will call it is almost like setting up a technology test bed, in the sense that we're going to come in and take those foundational use cases and immediately stand up a team, which we are calling the adoption pilot team, to be able to go off, seed those theories, build the skill that they need, and actually start crafting the automation around those foundational use cases. And why that's important is that you want to start out the gate really fast and being able to enable individuals, creating a team of people who are all working in a unified fashion towards that same goal, and of course be able to create something that brings the actual business value to the table very quickly and very fast in the beginning of this model. And so you know, in previous occasions you would find that it would take months and weeks to be able to get to the point where you actually have something that you can hold in your hand, or have something that you can show your leadership. And we feel that is not placed in the right time. That's something that needs to be brought way up to the front and delivered as quickly as possible, so that you can get excitement around from others, right? You want others to be excited about what you're doing so that they want to take part, thus helping to seed that adoption, seed that ability to be able to scale out what you're doing around automation. And then in the middle, you're kind of keeping that momentum going. You want to bring in different team members to become part of those core teams, so that they can learn from the folks who were there previous iterations, right? As well as be able to take that information back to their smaller IT areas and hopefully get some excitement with them there. And then as you begin to manage your expansion, this is when you want to create that spider web. Whereas you've now brought in multiple sets of individuals to learn about how they should be automating things, taking a part in those practices and standards that you've created, and now you want them to be able to go off and take that back to their smaller areas, and then start to charge up those individuals there to really be able to want to take part. It's in those phases where we would help them stand up communities of practice. It's in those phases where we would hold lunch and learns to be able to really drive the idea around what they're doing, the standards they've set in place around automation. Listen, I can remember back in my days where the only delay that our organization would have in taking on something new was the simple fact that we didn't know how our company wanted that thing to be applied. There were no standards, there were no safeguards, there was nothing available for us to learn from, so that we can feel invested in it. And that's one of the things that we want to drive here. Is we want to be able to create those standards, those use cases. We want to create a plan for others to be able to know when they want to do adoption, when they want to do automation, they know exactly what to do. They know exactly where to go. They know how the company is going to leverage it, and they know what things are available to them from a resource standpoint. And that's a really important piece of the puzzle, and that's what we're going to develop and create. So again, this iterative model will be there. Even after Red Hat is no longer there working alongside you, you'll be able to know exactly how to do this again and again for the new use cases or the new business challenges as they arise, yet giving you the opportunity to be able to innovate at scale. So I wanted to give you a visual as to how we approach that from a Red Hat Services perspective when it comes to driving cultural transformation. And what you'll very quickly see here is that the collaboration component is throughout the whole time that we're there. And again, that's what I will always encourage you if you're going to go off and do this on your own, is that you need to have collaboration from the very beginning meeting, from the very first time you want to talk about the transformation, all the way down to the end. Is the collaboration has to be important. You have to break down those silos. Everyone has to be transparent about their needs and wants, as well as their challenges. And the more you do that, you'll find that you have a lot in common with your brethren on the other side of the IT wall. As well as you find will also too, you'll have a lot in common with the folks who are driving the business as well, right? You're all having the same challenges and all want to solve for the same things. And the faster you realize that, the quicker you'll be able to build that collaboration. The other area here is that the delivery of this is different than what has used to be done, right? In the days of old, you would bring consulting in and they would come in and create the thing you needed, and then they would drop it on your desk and then they would disappear, and you would either use it or you would either let it get cold and never use it, and then wonder, well, was that really worth our investment? And one of the bigger things that we've come to realize as well is that instead of just having one set of individuals lead the transformation or lead driving a project, we actually have it where we flip it around. We want everyone to become the leaders of that that project. In this particular situation, we may come in at the beginning and lead the project, but then we flip it over and we turn it to the customer, where the customer begins to lead the project. And the reason behind that is that we believe very strongly in that teach the teacher model, whereas we will come in and teach you how to teach others so that you can then take that experience and then go off and share with others, as well as continue to drive the project without Red Hat necessarily leading it. And that's a very important piece of the puzzle, and that's definitely an approach that is different, that we've come to realize that will help to really drive and seed that culture transformation, versus just kind of telling people what to do and then they may or may not go off and do it. We're now going to empower them to say, well, okay, you tell us how you want us to handle it, and we will follow your lead. And that foundational point right there is huge, and that we have definitely seen how it makes a big difference in being able to really embody, enterprise scale. So I thank everyone for their time with me today, and I just want to very quickly recap, kind of what we spoke about the fact that in order to be able to truly embody enterprise scale of automation adoption, we need to be able to break down those silos, have the levels of collaboration. We need to embody the characteristics that we shared around transformation. We need to be able to leverage some of those open source capabilities that Red Hat has learned over time of dealing with open source for so many years, and how we've been able to apply that to being able to drive transformation. If you need Red Hat, we're here to serve. From a services perspective, we would always love to work with you and be able to help you achieve your goals around automation, and of course, helping you scale that adoption however you need. Thank you, and have a good day.